What is the most ducked up thing someone has shared with you thinking that you would be okay with it? NSFW. I worked in a lab with a small staff. One girl was extremely religious, like wrote Bible verses in her notebook during downtime, didn't curse, didn't drink. We maybe would talk about our kids or stuff like that. Nothing super serious. One day I'm working on an instrument and she looks over and asks if I'm a squirter. Do what now? She repeats herself and I sort of stammer out a questioning no, and she proceeds to go into detail about how she is and it drives her boyfriend crazy. I think I had an out-of-body experience during the entire exchange. I was just so blindsided, but the entire thing, I was just like, oh, okay, that's nice. Hey, so this GC is like, ick now, science, and we moved on. I still don't understand what happened. Edit. Autocorrect. A girl I was pseudo dating after high school. She was really wild and we had a lot of fun. But after like 2 months of being together she told me that she did all the crazy shit she did because she wanted to die. I don't remember ever learning why, but now that she met me and things were so good she was starting to want to live. I thought, hey, cool, I saved this chick. She then proceeded to ask if I would do a double suicide with her. Not exactly what I had in mind. Guys were planning a gang abuse at a place I worked at. At first I thought they were joking but being uncomfortably crude and in horrible taste. But no, it carried on and yep, they were gonna be waiting for her in the parking lot near her car after work. After I declined to get in on it I told my dad who worked there in management. He made sure cops were waiting for those guys in the parking lot where they planned to wait for the girl, and they showed up, and never showed up to work again. When I was a freshman in college my mother asked me if I wanted to commit suicide with her by jumping off a bridge. Not even that high a bridge. Honestly, I think her plan involved aiming for rocks. Pity date in middle school. The guy told me he actually fantasizes about my best friend and that he was just trying to date me to get closer to her. This was followed up with, but you're actually surprisingly kind of cool. As though the whole thing was meant to be a compliment. I was working the register, and some woman came through my line. Hi, how are you doing today? Did you find everything? I found a brain tumor in my head. Girl I was casually seeing and kind of feeling out if we wanted to sleep together told me the story of how she was the only true fan of the local minor league hockey team because she let the majority of them gangbang her in an alley outside a team party after a game once. She thought I would find it sexy. I did not. My mom once gave me a rundown of the frequency and quality of sex my dad gave her. Oh, and I was 9. As a white person, I've had other white people make a lot of casually racist comments to me and expect me to agree or be okay with it. It's pretty gross. An ex-friend. I have herpes but don't tell new guys I duck because they probably already have it. Nope. Goodbye you it stim. My grandfather readily admitted to and laughed while telling me that he has fathered at least 5 children he has never seen. Maybe more. One was with a poor Korean woman during the war and he applied to be moved the next day, vanishing and never seeing her again. He was angry when I didn't find it funny, angrier still when I was disgusted. He actually hit me when I asked him how that squared up with his extremist Christian morals and his staunch Republican beliefs. My mom saying I made her want to commit suicide. I was at my cashier job one day. A guy comes up to the counter with his stuff, and before I can even say hello, he just grumbles I got Lyme disease. Like, alright dude, that blows but I'm just some rondo in a gas station. There was this kid, Ricky, in my high school. He had a calculator, but he would tell everyone it was a cell phone. He would text on it and pretend sometimes to be talking to someone. For like 2 years he did that. Then one day, he told me that every day after school, he had to watch his 8-year-old sister until his parents got home from work. And he told me straight up that he would, most days, molest his sister during that time. Went on a few dates with a girl. Right after, I mean as I was zipping up my pants she started telling me how her uncle used to sexually assault her. Guy told me he was ducking a girl while choking her. She died. He finished, then performed CPR to get her breathing again. I had invited a close friend, his wife and 4 kids, to dinner. After dinner my wife and his wife were chatting, just sitting on couches opposite my friend and I, and our kids were all running around playing. And my friend cheekily points to his phone and shows me this half naked chick he's skyping with, and she's all waving and winking at me. I just stare the ducking it out at him till he knows that I'm nowhere near cool with this. Oh, and BTW, he's got 4 kids with an ex-wife that he's kinda seeing on the side as well. Went for a smoke break, lost my ducking cool, told him he had to get his it together or I break it to his wife. Haven't heard from him since. Kinda cut ties with the guy. One of the most narcissistic and toxic people I have met in my life. I was more pissed with the fact that he thought I would be cool or appreciate or be jealous of all the booty he was getting. I was at a party in Guatemala. I think I was 16 or so. There was a group of younger people like me sitting around a table talking about stuff. One girl started telling a story about her drive from one town to another when it was dark. She goes on to explain that she was getting really sleepy behind the wheel and all of a sudden she felt the car hit something. She said must have dozed off and strayed too far to the side of the road. She kept going because it was getting really late. Then she goes on to say that the really interesting part was a couple days later when she was reading a newspaper and saw a story about a phantom driver that killed 2 people walking on the side of the road on the same night she was driving on that same road. Can you believe that? She said. I think that might have been me that did that. She said it like, is that interesting or what? None of the other people reacted to it like they should have. They were like, whoa, that's crazy. I just looked around at everyone and I thought I must have misunderstood her story. Spanish is my second language. Later that night I asked my friend, did she say that she thinks she killed those 2 people? Yep, he said. She's crazy. Honestly, I was so shocked and young. I didn't even think to do anything about it. I still regret that. I was a young teenager, about 14 or so. My friends and I used to hang out with some like-age girls from the next neighborhood. One girl we knew, Susan, had a little brother who was odd, and when overstimulated could be wound up into a screaming frenzy. The little guy was maybe 8 or 10. Not a bad kid. Nowadays we would say he had ADHD. But this was a long time ago. In the pre-Ritalin era. Susan had a way of calming him down. Maybe it was a sedative or something. Susan also had an older boyfriend. 18 or 19. Call him Bob because I can't remember his name. Bob had a dumb and slightly creepy friend. Call him Alf, who was 17 or 18. One day I was talking to Alf in Susan's living room. Just him and me, one-on-one. I think the little brother had maybe just had a tantrum. Can't remember. Alf says, you know, that kid will do whatever I tell him to do. Big saliva toothy smile. A couple of days ago, I had him nearly sucking my cock. My grandma had gangrene last year and had to go through tons of surgeries and barely kept her leg. Every single time we're in public, she starts telling someone, usually the cashier, about how poise pads gave her gangrene and how she barely survived. And she doesn't leave out a detail. I'm not the one that has to deal with it, but I think it's relevant to the question. A girl literally said to me one day if I was a man I would probably just end up being a pedophile on a conversation. Friendship didn't long too much with her. I was a new teacher working in the copy room and another teacher introduced herself to me. Within 5 minutes she disclosed that she had been committed to a mental hospital with a 72-hour hold the previous year. I didn't really know what to say and was able to avoid her until the end of the school year. She stopped me in the hall and said, I think I'm going to kill myself today. I was kind and spoke with her a few minutes, then took her to the office. Kind of minor compared to some of the stuff in here, but I used to work at a place that pulverized and analyzed mineral samples from mine sites, and we had to be careful with the dust to keep the samples pure. I tell you this just to add an extra 10% to the real meat of this one. A new guy at work. Second day. Looks like that schmo goon from the Pepsi Man game. Kind of a loudmouth ithead. Co-worker across from us is a Sikh. Turban. Thick accent. Basically everything that makes itheads shift into high gear. Ithead says to me, hey, wanna see how to piss off a Hindu? Grabs a handful of the sample he's working on. Fires it at the Sikh guy with the compressed air hose. Ducks both samples in the work area. Sikh bro is covered in rock dust and understandably gesturing. The duck was that. Reported him at coffee break 20 minutes later. It didn't show up the next day. Second place goes to the guy who told me he was trying to get fired by being at our job. Then followed me to my next job and tried to get me to recommend him to the boss there. I did not. Girl I dated said she quit sucking her brother's D in case we got serious. We did not get serious. There was a girl at my school who developed a severe eating disorder, and one entire summer she ate only like cucumbers and watermelon and stuff like that and worked out all the time. When school started again she was so thin she could barely go up the stairs and had to be taken to a hospital. We were all rooting for her to get better. She did get better and also gained a couple extra pounds. She was super energetic and looked very happy, and I was really happy for her. So one day this girl walks past me and my friend in the hallway. My friend looks at her, makes this disgusted face and says to me, if I were her, I would rather die than become fat again. And I was like, WTF. Honestly, it hurt me so much that she said that because a family member passed away a few years ago from anorexia, and I wish more people knew that most cases of severe eating disorders end fatally. My dad telling me in all seriousness not to have kids because of theory not worth it. Thanks dad. Former friend of mine was cheating on his wife, bragging to me that he gave her herpes because he forgot to wrap it up. I was a cop at the time and I knew it was a crime. I told his wife. He got 2 years for that. LA Rev Stat 40, 1062, 1062. Infection of others prohibited. It is unlawful for any person to inoculate or infect another person in any manner with a venereal disease, or to do any act which will expose another to inoculation or infection with a venereal disease. This girl, who was kinda weird, seemed super eager to lose her virginity. She messaged me out of the blue online, saying she wanted to meet up and do stuff. I was still a virgin, but the alarms going off in my head were loud enough to drown out my pubescent sexual urges. Then, a couple weeks after I said no to that, she starts messaging me again, saying how this dude took her virginity. She said that it hurt a lot, but he kept going. Even when she said to stop, she wasn't like mad about this. She was super ecstatic. I note the duck away immediately. A girl at a class project told me about her abortion. Then her friend joined in to tell us about her 2 abortions. We had just met for like an hour. Her boyfriend came to pick her up later and we ended up smoking weed in his car. College is fun. Not me, but my mum. Recently my parents were at dinner with old friends of theirs. Like, friends for 20+ years. And also me and my brother had grown up with their son, who is of a similar age to us both. My parents are left-leaning, politically, so when this guy starts going on about bloody immigrants, it made my parents quite uncomfortable. Then he started hurling insults at LGBT people, not knowing that I'm trans and also not straight. My mum actually stopped him and said, very calmly, if you don't shut up right now, you and I will have an argument. I was so proud when my dad told me she'd stood up for me. I was seeing a guy and we were talking about our relatives' weirdness. Out of blue, he tells me, do you know that I duck my cousin? I was super shocked, and later on he told me the story of the gangbang. Turns out she was not related to him, but she was the cousin of his cousin from different sides. All of the cousins were taking their turn on this girl cousin at one night. I was super furious. Did you ducking abuse a girl and tell me this? Turns out she gave them her consent and even took showers between the guys and having multiple orgasms. But still, man, why do you tell me on our second date? My depressed friend sent me a video of witches being burned in some rural village in Africa. I didn't know what it was at first and thought it was some sort of skit or prank. The one guy kept trying to escape and they kept pushing him back in the fire, and the other one was just sitting there accepting the fact that she was about to die. I realized what I was actually watching. I think about that video every so often. Honestly, I had no idea what it was at first. He sent it so out of the blue. Yeah, we do not talk anymore. Was at a small social gathering at the home of a guy I had met a few days before. He was a possible love interest and there was a charge. He was a huge football player, southern white dude. Very beefy. Not my regular type, but I thought he had charm. I asked for a Tylenol and followed him to the kitchen to get one. Everyone else was just out of earshot. He pulled out the bottle. It was new. As he opened it, he pointed at me and said, "You know why they put cotton balls in these darts? To remind the N what they did before they sold drugs." I pretended to laugh kind of and played it cool so I could get out of there without him physically harming me. Did not go back. I went to a liquor store to grab some beer one time and the cashier and I had a 30-minute conversation about her grandfather recently passing and the drama in her family. Seems like she just needed someone to talk to, so I obliged, gave her some advice, then went on my way. After a few beers at a backyard cookout, my state trooper neighbor tells me whenever he busts someone with drugs there is a 25% finder's fee. I ask him to explain. In a nutshell, he finds 1 pound of weed. It gets written in the report that 0.75 lbs was found. Where does the rest go, you ask? He gives it to his twin teenage sons to smoke, so they don't risk getting busted buying weed and causing embarrassment to his family name. Not me, but my ex. He was a big guy, and when he was at university, he earned money by working as a bouncer. Cue this marvelous image of a bouncer flipping through biochemistry flashcards in downtime. He went out one night, and anyone who has been to uni will recognize that you often get these big groups of your friends. They're flatmates. The flatmates' friends. So you often meet people who barely knew you. When his job came up, it was the topic of conversation for a while. Later on, a guy approaches him and says, "Shall we find a tramp hobo for USA to beat up?" Clearly assuming that my ex was the sort of person who enjoyed violence, and presumably violence against people unable to defend themselves. My ex was flabbergasted, and it took him a few seconds to recover and tell this little douchebag that no, he didn't want to beat up tramps, and if he saw douchebag doing it, he would knock the it out of him. This was a nice middle class guy attending uni, not an uneducated thug. Okay, maybe an educated thug, then. My mom was looking to buy a house that was more wheelchair friendly for my dad, and so most houses she went to view were generally occupied by older people in adapted property. I went to one of these viewings once, where an old woman and her son were showing us round. The son was okay, pragmatic, showed us the rooms and such. His mom was a bit doddery but very pleasant. We all ended up having a fairly lengthy chat outside the house afterwards, and for whatever reason, the old woman had turned the conversation to her daily toilet routine. And so it began. Detailed chats about how one must have it at least once a day, and she kept repeating the phrase putrid feces over and over again, to the point where you were sort of numb to it having an effect on you. She even managed to spin an anecdote around it of how she met Louis Armstrong, and they also had a lengthy conversation about putrid feces. As this conversation went on, you could see the son's face slowly collapsing on itself and getting bluer and bluer. My mom ended up not buying the house. A person, M, for some reason told me about a man, G, who ducked a chicken at his family farm one night. The following day one chicken was dead. Odd, but apparently G didn't link it was the same chicken he ducked. So the following night he does it again with another chicken. The same thing, a dead chicken the following morning. He ducks one more chicken on the third night, and a third dead chicken. Then he stopped, or left the family farm. In G's defense, when he finished, the chickens were still alive. I don't know why G told M, and I don't know why M told me. M knew the story before they married. They divorced some years later. I was friends with a girl online, and then one day she admitted that she and her friend had had an argument with another girl at her school. That night, this girl I knew and her friend snuck into the girl's garden, lured her 2 cats towards them, and killed them with ducking stones. Smashed 2 cats' heads in with stones. Safe to say we aren't online friends anymore. One guy I dated asked me to cut his balls off because it turned him on. While I was waiting for my bus to arrive, I was chatting to a bus driver who was taking his break at the interchange. I remembered him because he used to fill in throughout my high school days when my regular driver was away. Out of nowhere he says, "Get a load of this." Opens a video on his phone of a woman being ducked by a horse and screaming, and laughs over it. For context, I was 19 and he was in his late 40s at least. He'd been driving my school bus on and off since I was 12. To top it off, he occasionally drives my bus home these days. I prefer to drive for obvious reasons. A workmate recorded diarrhea coming out of his ass and sent me the video. A guy at work told me how his former business partner screwed him over, so he went over to his house one night and put a .357 in his face and told him he was going to give me $100,000 or I don't care how the police report reads. It was his first day. We'd met 30 minutes before. He said he got the money, though. Don't you just want to take these curry ducks and push them onto the train tracks? Random guy at the parking garage at the Metropark train station in New Jersey near one of the biggest Indian population centers in the nation. I tried calming him down, talking about how diversity is a great thing and it's cool to see all of us trying to get to the same place with the same goals. He just said, "Oh come on, there aren't any of them here right now, you can cut the PC bullet." I then told him to never talk to me again. Probably should have clocked him, but I like not having an assault charge on my record. A classmate in high school brought a pen drive to class. In it, Daisy's Destruction, the infamous child abuse porn video. Some of my classmates watched out of pure curiosity on a friend's PC. I did not, because I knew about the video from some vids I watched on YouTube. In the end, nobody ever mentioned the video again, and I had to make sure no traces of the video were left on my friend's PC. I had this odd coworker, and one time she came out of the bathroom, sidled up to me and stage whispered, "I'm on my menstrual cycle and I just passed a big clot. Now I'm a girl, so I'm familiar with periods, and strongly feel women's reproductive cycles should not be as socially taboo and stigmatized." But I sort of let out this involuntary "yar" and scurried away. Guy at work told a totally awful anti-Semitic joke riddle not knowing I was Jewish. We worked the pizza station at a college dining facility at the time. And he goes, "How is a Jew not like a pizza?" You don't want to know the answer. My friend showed me 2G1C. Youngsters have read it. Do not look this up.